present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. I am presenting AB 351, which has been sent to suspense. It is the California Liberty Preservation Act. And I know that everyone in this room, I know that everyone in this legislative body deeply supports the idea that no one be denied their civil right to due process. And so what my bill does is prevents the indefinite detainment of any individual on California soil for any reason. In many cases, they bring up the word terrorist, and all of a sudden, civil rights vanish. And we've seen that in the past. The terrorists of the past were the Japanese, and we saw the internment camps, and we saw them deprived of their rights and their liberty by our government. And so under the NDAA, which is the National Defense Authorization Act, they have that power right now. And I don't trust the government to have that kind of power. So my bill proposes to make it illegal for anyone. It makes it illegal for any California agency to comply with such an order, and would essentially prohibit the state from cooperating with federal officials in indefinitely detaining anyone in California. And if you've been watching the news this week, you have to have a chill go down your spine, because it isn't limited to whether the government doesn't like your politics and you've got the IRS targeting you. We've even seen reporters who are supposed to be the watchdogs of government being targeted. And so I think any of us could ultimately be deemed a threat and ultimately come under the provisions of the NDAA. And I think that we in California should take a stand, and AB 351 provides that. I want to address the fiscal analysis. I appreciated the committee's analysis. I thought it was an excellent analysis overall. The committee has a concern that if we take this position, which a number of other states have, and it's a growing movement across the country, that perhaps the federal government will deprive us of federal funds. And Virginia has taken this act. They have passed this measure, and they have not been deprived of any federal funds. So I think that while that's a worthwhile concern, I think in practice it has not been borne out. And for that reason, I'm very hopeful that the committee will take that under consideration, when this comes up for the suspense hearing. With that, I would ask for your consideration at that time, and I have a few witnesses that would like to testify if that's permissible.
Of course. Welcome. First witness. Alex Shear here on behalf of We Are 1776. AB 351 is a bill that should be supported in a bipartisan fashion because it would establish a non-compliance framework with regard to sections 1021 and 1022 of the National Defense Authorization Act. If you're not familiar with the NDAA, to be brief, it authorizes the federal government to indefinitely detain any American citizen as long as they are considered a suspected terrorist. In essence, it violates the First Amendment right to petition for a redress of grievances, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, and 14th Amendments. And with that said, as representatives of the people, you swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Therefore, it is your duty to take a stand against a federal statute that gives the federal government the authority to kidnap any American based on the suspicion that they might be an enemy combatant. So We Are 1776 supports this bill, and we urge you to pass it through, or actually we urge you to pass this bill off the suspense calendar. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Janine Kloss with the Libertarian Party of California, and I feel like this bill is an important step towards showing that we feel very strongly about our civil liberties, and it sends a message that we do not support even federal bills that may reduce those civil liberties or allow organizations to team up and indefinitely detain people for whatever random reasons they determine. So, and to address the concerns in the analysis as far as the statements, the historical knowledge that's included in the bill, I feel like that's very important because it's easy to forget. So if not now, when do we remind people about truth and consequence? Thank you for your consideration.
And let's go to public comment and support.
Chair members, Francisco Labaca on behalf of the American Civil Liberties Union, we urge your favorable consideration if it goes to suspense, to come off suspense. Thank you.
My name is Nancy Larned. I belong to many groups, including the 10th Amendment Center. Our constitutional due process rights are totally erased by NDAA, and one person can make that decision. Currently, no one is safe from an overreaching federal government. AB 351 would fix that. Thank you for considering this bill. Please vote yes when you vote.
Thank you. Are there witnesses in opposition? Seeing none. Questions or comments from the panel? Mr. Lindberg.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly, for putting this bill forward. I have one real quick question. I'm looking at the fiscal effect, and it says that there's no state cost, and the analysis says that it may even save some resources. Why, I'm having a hard time understanding why it's on suspense.
I think the concern in the analysis is that it might lead to the denial of federal funds, matching funds, or something of that nature. I don't believe that will be the case. It hasn't been the case in practice. I don't see why they would single out California when they haven't singled out any other state that has passed this. But, you know, I think this leads to a bigger question, which is, what are our civil rights really worth? And we all swore an oath to defend and uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of California. And we're to defend it from enemies, foreign and domestic. And I think all of us have stated that we would be categorically against allowing what happened to Japanese Americans to ever happen again on our soil. And so that's why the policy here has enjoyed such tremendous support. I wouldn't call it bipartisan, it was tripartisan. I mean, it was everybody and their brother that testified in policy committee. It made it out of public safety unanimously. I think that I should just rest my case after that.
Well, I have a comment, and that is, I just want to thank you for bringing forth this bill. Just to clarify, the state costs do come from a concern that if the federal government ever insists on enforcing this NDAA, they could withhold funding from the states and their National Guard. So we had to consider that as a state cost. But I think you've raised some very important and very intriguing issues in this bill. And anytime you have the ACLU on a Donnelly bill, you've worked very hard to unite. No, I'm serious. I mean, you've worked very hard to unite, I think, people who care about liberties. So we're working with you. I know we've suggested some amendments, and we're trying to make sure that this bill, that we're cautious and we're deliberative, but I just want to thank you for raising the issues.
And I want to say, as my close, if there's no other questions, I'm grateful for the committee's serious consideration. I'm looking forward to working with you on the ideas and suggestions that have been put forth, and I would be deeply grateful for your serious consideration of this coming off suspense so that we could hear it in a larger context. And I thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you presenting on, 424 as a candidate for consent, correct?
I think I'll just